everyone, and welcome to our second installment of How to Write a Book. Today we're going to be talking about step 2 for how to write a book, which is going to be character development. So first off, when you're doing character development, the first thing you probably should look at or probably should do is actually a character chart. So a character chart comes in various forms. We actually have one on our Neoleaf Press website, which I will put in the description below. And a character chart, what that will do for you is give you a ton of information you have to fill in that you may never have thought of before. The reason that we're doing character studies and character charts as step 2 before doing something like outlining is because you can't accurately outline a book without knowing who your character is, what their true wants are, what their real desires are, and how they might interact with how you want the story to progress. The way to figure that out is by doing character study and using character charts. So with certain character charts, you're going to get things like, I'm going to look at the one we have on our website right now. We're going to start very basic. We're going to go name, nickname, age, height, weight, all that stuff you probably already figured out. Then we're going to go down and we're going to ask what their ethnicity is. That's a good thing to know, especially, more than just, oh, they're white, oh, they're black. No, I'm talking about concrete. If you're doing a modern day story, are they part Italian? Are they 1/3 Dutch? Do they have some Native American in there? This could be beneficial to your story later on. Marital status, what their parents are like, what their siblings were like, what their home life was like when they were growing up. All that is important to know because you really want to know every aspect of this character, almost as if they were yourself or your best friend. You're going to look at favorite style of music, favorite food. Who were their enemies growing up? Did they have a bully that really picked on them? How did that affect them? And then you're going to get down to a lot deeper emotion. You're going to look into some of the biggest drives of your main character. So on our character chart, we're going to have things like what are their superstitions? What are their fears? What would make them, or what would they do when they're excited, angry, anxious? And those are all really good things. The next thing I would say is build on that. So one of my golden rules is when you're building a character, you're going to do 3 strengths, 3 of their greatest strengths. Are they great at coming up with problem-solving ideas? Are they very loyal friends? All those things are going to really help you understand your character as if you're understanding yourself. Next one, I want you to write 3 flaws down. Do they talk a lot when they're anxious? Do they make very rash decisions? Do they have anger problems? And I'm saying 3 strengths and 3 flaws because they balance each other out very well. You can do more if you'd like. The more that you do, the more you understand your character, but 3 tends to be pretty good. And then I'd say 2 fears, 2 really big fears. And I would go, unless you think it's going to make a difference in your story, I would go beyond a fear of spiders or snakes. More like a really, really deep felt fear that filling out the rest of the character chart might help you figure out what it is. So say, the cliche, they lost their parents, so they have this really deep set fear of losing family. I mean, that's very cliche. It's done over and over again, but if done well, they always say there's no new stories right now. We're just rewriting kind of the same plots and the same themes over and over in a different way. But you could go even more than that. Maybe they were in a tragic car crash and they're terrified not of losing somebody, but of vehicles or a certain type of vehicle. Maybe they are terrified of something really random, say dogs, not too random, but maybe in their childhood they were attacked and viciously mauled by a dog. So now every time they see one, they panic. Maybe it's a certain kind of dog too. Like if it's a little dog, it doesn't bother them. But if you get a big St. Bernard, deep bark, it's going to send them right back to kind of that PTSD moment. So that's what I'm talking about, fears. I go really, really deep when you're doing fears. The last one is going to be desires. I'd say do 5 desires because that is going to help you push your story along. So you want things, your main character would like to have a family. That's a very good desire. Achieve wealth, rescue someone. You could really go way more than 5, but don't do less. Because the thing is, if you only have one or two basic desires and you're trying to write a full-length novel, you will not have enough to push this novel through. You will not have anything to build any subplots off of. You won't be able to give your readers small victories. So really hashing this out will make your life a lot easier. I'm going to look at the character chart again that we have online. And this character chart actually brings in, it's got a few grammatical errors I'm going to have to go in and change. But this chart really goes into some really good aspects. Something you should think about is don't just do your main character. Our best recommendation, do it for every character in your novel. And that sounds just crazy, especially if you've got a very complex novel. But you probably won't regret it. The reason I say that is if you so in depth know every single one of your characters, nothing's going to surprise you. They're not going to be able to very easily hijack your story and take you off in another direction as characters tend to do. Best example of this is a book that I wrote, 4 or 5 years ago. I haven't published it yet because it needs one more revision that I just haven't had I just plumb did not want to do. The reason being is because it is a 90,000 word novel. It stars 2 different couples. It's a romance. And with one of the couples, I got to the very end of the novel and realized that their past histories, the current way the story was going, there was no way these two could actually fall in love. They hated one another. And that deep felt hate was in something I could not get over. I cannot make it into a love story without making it seem forced and really showing a lot of narrative intrusion. So what I did is I had to go back and rewrite every single one of these because I did not know my characters well enough when I started writing them. I explored them and I learned about them as I went, and then I found out that for what I wanted, these 2 characters were totally incompatible. And so this is going to help save you. Doing all this character development and character research is really going to help save you in the long run from having that happen. Now, one of the other thing I want to talk about while doing character research is names. We all have a really hard time finding names and figuring them out. Probably if you've been an author for a while, you have 3 or 4 baby books sitting on your shelf. It might look really awkward to some people who don't understand. And baby books are great. I really do love them. So my next 2 pieces of advice for names then is 1, names are not copyrighted unless it's something really, really, really obvious like Harry Potter. That'll get you in trouble. But if you're, say, at the supermarket and you see Michael K. Stevenson and you're like, oh, that's kind of a neat name. That's generic enough that you can use it. You can combine first names and last names. So really don't feel like you can't use the names of your friends, your family, and people around you. Just jumble them up. It's like having, a whole bunch of recipe cards, shuffling them together and pull out 2 names, which is a way you can do it, and figure out what's going to work best. The other thing that I like to use is a website called behindthename.com. It's a wonderful website to really have a hard-hitting name. And the reason for that is it gives you all the past history of a name, kind of where it came from, where it's typically used, is it popular, is it not popular, and that's going to give you, if, say, you have a Russian character over here in Las Vegas. You can really go through and find good Russian names that aren't stereotypical, they aren't, just Nikolai, or something, something like that. Peter, spelled P-E-T-R, I do believe, is how you spell it for Russian. You can really mix things up like that. Another good resource is going to be your fantasy name generators. They are wonderful for coming up with just crazy and fun names. RPG name generators, any of those. They're made for gaming. They're made for creating NPC characters in like a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, but what you can use them for is giving you names for all your characters. If you're writing a fantasy, that's great. You have elven names, dwarven names, but if you're writing a contemporary, that's fine too. They have human names and they're going to throw some really unique ones at you that you might not have thought of before. So that's going to be really your next step. This video is going to be a little shorter just simply because of that. Your next step is just know your characters before you start putting pen to page. This is going to make sure that you do not make mistakes later on. Other than that, I think that's all I have to teach you today. So thank you everyone for coming out and watching. Next time we're going to be posting step 3, which will probably get you a little more into the writing, but I'm not going to reveal anything yet. So thank you for joining me. Have a good night.